can't run.
Gotham TV Podcast, do not cross Alan and Montoya.
Can't run.
This is Victoria Cartagena. I play Renee Montoya on Gotham, and you're listening to Gotham TV Podcast.
Hey, this is Andrew Stewart Jones. I play Crispus Allen on Gotham, and you are listening to Gotham TV Podcast.
Welcome to Gotham TV Podcast, the unofficial podcast about the TV show Gotham and the DC Connected Universe. I'm one of your hosts, John.
And I'm Derek. Welcome back. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome on board.
Yeah, so I think straight into the news. There's actually quite a lot of news this week, despite what we've said previously in other podcasts. But in Gotham news, TVGuide.com has a vote, and over 350,000 votes were cast for this season's best new show. And, lo and behold, drumroll, Gotham came out on top. Gotham won, which is great news for obviously everyone involved in the production of the TV show. Actors, cast, crew, creators, showrunners, studios, production company, you name it, across the board. That's great news that there is that interest.
Yeah, absolutely. TV Guide also pointed out, obviously, this was the most anticipated show of the season as well. So it's nice to see it's nice to see when a show is really anticipated, it's also getting the votes after so many episodes have been aired in the US that people are still liking it and still enjoying
Definitely.
it. Yeah, and I think we'd be casting that vote as well for best new show of the season for us as well. I think so far.
Absolutely. Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt.
But in other news this week, what have we been doing for the entire week so far when we're normally preparing for this show?
Well, we have been playing Lego Batman 3, Beyond Gotham. Coinciding with Interstellar, we went beyond the planet.
Into space with Batman. Yeah, great fun game. We've talked about Lego Batman all the way through its making of, I think, from the idea of it right back in April when we knew the game was coming, all the way up to the release. We saw a couple of playthroughs of it in New York, a couple of panels about it, and we've been playing it now for probably a good 12 or 15 hours that we could have been focusing on other more productive stuff. But it was great fun. It's a rainy weekend in Dublin, so why not? Yeah,
really great fun. And actually, speaking of rain, if you hear anything that may be or may sound like rain, it's because we have been in Noah's deluge at the moment. So that might just be the river bursting its banks outside the door. You never know. We've had a lot of rain. But luckily we had Lego Batman to keep our minds away from impending biblical disasters. And it's great. It's funny. It's witty. It has our favourite superhero, or should I say anti-hero, Dark Knight. Mm-hmm. Being fairly dismissive of poor old Robin, and great fun, and loving it to bits. Loads of good little puzzles, good action play. Still the odd few little glitches, but where would we be without the odd little glitch in a Lego game?
Absolutely.
It's almost part and parcel, but it looks really good, and we're just playing it on PS3 as well.
Yeah, that's true. One of the other good things about it is loads of good little in-jokes for anybody who enjoys the comic books. Loads of fun little moments there. There's even a level featuring Adam West from Lego Batman 66, which we've yet to play, but it looks like it's going to be great fun.
But we haven't saved any of the Adam Wests in peril yet, so that's our bad.
So get out and buy it if you have a little time, or if it's raining or snowing where you are. Go get it.
Yeah, it's great for kids and big kids alike.
Absolutely, which is definitely us.
And then, with regards to the cinematic universe in the DC world, we have Jared Leto has been earmarked, or rumoured, I should say, to play the Joker in the Suicide Squad movie, with obviously other members of the Suicide Squad like Harley Quinn.
Yeah, it's a really interesting. A lot of this stuff kind of broke last week, and it sounds like fantasy casting. Everything that's in here. So essentially, David Ayer has been kind of talking up the fact that he's writing and directing Suicide Squad, which he's calling the Dirty Dozen of superhero films. The basic premise of the Suicide Squad is that there's a bunch of villains who, essentially, with a gun to their head or some bombs strapped around their body, they're told, if they don't carry out tasks for the government, they'll be killed. And the lineup this time, it's been confirmed to include the Joker and been confirmed to include Harley Quinn. And some casting has started to come out, so this is where we're getting Jared Leto playing Joker.
Rumoured at this stage. Yes,
absolutely.
Rumoured. There
a big line under rumoured.
Yeah, big line.
What do you think?
I could see him playing that. I think Jared Leto is brilliant. I remember first listening to 30 Seconds to Mars purely because it was him, and obviously it was his brother and his band. And I really like those albums. I've really enjoyed those. We've seen them a couple of times play live over in Dublin. So loved that. I've loved his film career as well. Some of it's been quite difficult, in particular the
Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah, Requiem for a Dream.
American History X, wasn't it? No, it's Fight Club, isn't it?
No, Fight Club, but Requiem for a Dream was particularly difficult. It was good to see him in Dallas Buyers Club and get that kind of recognition. So I've enjoyed him in film, I've enjoyed him on TV, and so on. I've enjoyed, then, lastly, his music. So I'm kind of quite excited by seeing him rumoured to be in line to play the Joker in the Suicide Squad movie.
Yeah, it's some very big shoes to fill. I'd feel sorry for him. I think I heard someone make the point about Jared Leto in this, that it'll prove very quickly whether he's a fan of the comics or whether he's a fan of the material, because for the next 3 to 4 years he's going to be putting up questions about how are you going to do a better job than Heath Ledger, which Heath Ledger put up with for 2 or 3 years after taking on the part from Jack Nicholson. So it's going to be interesting for him.
If one of the things we have learned from asking, such as Victoria Cartagena and Andrew Stewart Jones, and then at New York Comic Con asking the cast that were there about how they, what influence do comic books play? To what extent do they look at other actors who have played those roles before? And I mean, I think the general consensus I seem to hear coming back from actors and is, of course, we're mindful of the material and we will read the material and look at elements of it to make sure that we're not suddenly going completely off the wall, potentially, and we're respectful of other people's interpretations of the character. But ultimately, they're in it. They're a professional, so they're in it to put essentially their own spin. I mean, we heard like Ben McKenzie said, I'm not here to imitate. If I'm here to do imitation of someone else who has played Jim Gordon, I'm not going to get very far, and the audience are going to spot that. I have to do my version of it. And of course, he's drawing from the same material as the previous actors. Yeah. So I think I'm really excited to see Jared Leto. I think the thing for me will be he might even just look like the Joker from Arkham Asylum. His legs are so thin. When we saw him on stage, he could actually look like a cartoon. That real thin version of the Joker that you see. Yeah. He has the potential to actually be able to do that physically. Because his legs are literally cocktail sticks.
Absolutely, and he's 5 years older than me and looks about 20. So, fair dues. And other casting news for the Suicide Squad.
He's 6 years older than me, and I still look just as good as him.
That's very true. That's probably true. In other casting news from Suicide Squad, there's other kind of rumors about Jai Courtney, who I know from Good Day to Die Hard, I think it is. Is that like the 7th Die Hard film, the one that everybody
awful
forgets?
Film in Russia.
One. Yep, that terrible one where he plays the Bruce Willis's son. What I like him more for is his film, the Jack Reacher film with Tom Cruise that he did.
Brilliant.
He's great in that.
That's
He's
the
really
first time I
character.
Saw him, I think, on film, and I really enjoyed that film.
Yeah, and he's being rumoured to play Deadshot in the Suicide Squad film. Also being rumoured is Margot Robbie, who was in Wolf of Wall Street, has been rumoured as to play Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn is such a big character for cosplayers who are at every single convention I've been at for the last couple of years. It's really interesting to see a lady take on this part, and everything I've heard about her, everybody is delighted about this idea of the casting.
Will she have the hammer?
Possibly.
And will she be known as Harley Quinzel, as you kept correcting me a number of episodes ago?
Yes, Harleen Quinzel is the original before she becomes Harley Quinn, yeah. That's her name when she's a psychiatrist. But this sounds like it's not going to be an origin story of the characters. It sounds
they're
like
going to go straight into the suicide part of it.
Yeah.
Who will die first?
Hopefully none, because the point is they don't die. They go and do secret missions.
And then we have heard as well that Will Smith and Tom Hardy are in talks for unspecified, in quotes, unspecified roles. So, presumably Bane is back.
Maybe. Will Tom Hardy reprise the role for this film, do you think?
Probably not, because he did die at the end, did he? In The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
I can't remember now. I just
he
remember
was
him
shot
getting...
he was
yeah,
shot
he
and
got
killed by
blown...
Catwoman,
yeah, by Catwoman.
Yeah.
So he got blown across the room, so it would be unlikely he'd get up from that. And then there's Will Smith, who maybe will come as Mr. Fish Mooney.
Maybe. Oh, very good. So Mr. Fish Mooney would be in the film of Suicide Squad.
Maybe he will be Shellfish Mooney.
No, that's not worth it.
No, it's not going to happen, and that joke is way too awful for it to be considered seriously by Hollywood.
You just wonder if perhaps he was in the offices with his wife, with Jada, and they happened to just kind of take him inside and said, "Well, we have you here. Maybe would you like to do a movie in the future?" Is that where the idea came from, that he's in talks? Really have no idea what character he'd play at all. And again, these are all at very, very good rumour stage at the moment.
Yeah, there's very early stages at the moment.
There's a lot of people in the production that are obviously trying to promote the 25 films that they've got coming up on the slate. So David Ayers is definitely connected to the film. He's definitely involved in writing and directing it.
They've got to put something out to keep people interested till 2050.
I think it's something like that.
Something like that. No, actually, this is one of the early ones, though, isn't it? So, I mean, in that sense, it's probably about right that there should be casting rumours.
Yeah, but even in 2050, Jared Leto will still look about 20. So, anyway.
Well, that's true. It's the man that never ages. Definitely. And of course, just quickly as well, people will have seen the Suicide Squad referenced in Arrow. So, I mean, that's another area where we've seen them very recently as well. And then on some final DC TV news, speaking of the Arrow, it's about Constantine. Now, we said that we certainly aren't going to be doing a podcast about Constantine, but we have been lucky enough to be given some review copies of episodes 4 and 5 of Constantine. And we also got episode 3 as well at the same time, Devil's Vinyl. And we had done a review for the first episode because we saw that at New York Comic Con, and we've just put up again a review of Constantine episode 4, and we'll do the same for episode 5. Unfortunately, it's not aired in Ireland at this moment in time. It's on Amazon Prime Instant Video in the UK, which we are unable to get here in Ireland, and obviously it's on NBC in the US. But we've been lucky enough to get these episodes, so we're able to look at them and review them, and we thought that we would do written reviews, so these are up on the website at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Right now, they're coming highly recommended from us. The show Constantine was one that we were really interested in. We saw the pilot. We thought it was really good. Needed a few tweaks to what's been happening in it, but now it's 4 episodes in. The episode was
Feast of Friends, episode 4.
Yeah, Feast of Friends, which is essentially taken directly from issue 1 of Hellblazer. And issue 2 of Hellblazer, sorry. It's a really good storyline where it gives a little bit more background on the story that happened with John Constantine that put him into this situation, and gives a little bit more background, a little bit more details of him and his friend. If you are any way interested in the Hellblazer comic books, and you're an adult viewer, we will definitely say the show is a much more adult show than Gotham is. Definitely, there's a lot more violence, a lot more special effects and action and horror, really.
Yeah, and just reference, I suppose, to the occult and voodoo, that type of stuff, I suppose.
Absolutely, but I'd highly recommend it if you're into the comic books. Check out particularly episode 4. I thought it was a really standout episode for the series so far, and hopefully it's going down a path where it'll really keep going for a long time. Absolutely,
and as well, we were also able to get involved in a conference call roundtable discussion with the showrunners of Constantine. We were asked if we wanted to call in, and of course we kind of didn't want to pass up the opportunity. So we got to sit in on and ask a couple of questions with Daniel Cerrone and David Escoya from Constantine. And we're not able as such to do a podcast about that and put that audio up, but we have the transcript, and we will be able to filter and sort through that and put up written transcript of that roundtable discussion with other different media people and journalists in the near future.
Yeah, it was quite a long conversation. It was about 45 minutes where each journalist got to ask a question about the show and of the two principal showrunners for the show. What makes it of interest again to our listeners, I think, would probably be David Escoya. Particularly, we've done our own interview with him, which is up on the site, and we have him on the podcast before. But this particular interview with David is where he's talking about why he chose to do a TV show. Firstly, why he chose to do Constantine after doing films like Man of Steel, after writing the 3 Batman films with Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan, after doing Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., the TV series, which I still haven't asked him about. This is the second time we've met him, and I still haven't asked him about the Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., starring David Hasselhoff. One day I will get to ask him that question.
And it is the anniversary, it's the 25th anniversary of the Berlin Wall coming down.
Absolutely.
So it's ripe for the asking.
It's a year of celebration for David Hasselhoff.
You have failed.
I have failed this podcast again, John.
Oh no. Because I wasn't around either. I was in Brussels.
Yeah, that's right.
With work, so I wasn't around, unfortunately. But Derek was lucky enough to have this roundtable. Seems really interested in the question that Derek had asked about the music involved with the show.
Yeah, Bear McCreary is the musician that does all the soundtrack for this. He does the soundtracks for Walking Dead, does the soundtrack for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's a fantastic musician. I asked them about the music in the show. They were delighted to talk about it. A really good little bit that we got from that. They also talk about where the series is going, their intentions for a bunch of characters from the comic books that are going to be coming in. They essentially, just to give a little snippet of what they said, said that every single one of John Constantine's friends will be brought in and will be revealed over the course of the next up to episode 13 or 14.
That's exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So
anyone interested in comics as well at all should check out Hellblazer. I mean, John Constantine was established by Alan Moore, like the great Alan Moore, who did Watchmen, V for Vendetta, From Hell, all these really quite iconic and amazing graphic novels from 80s. Did Swamp Thing, which is where he introduced John Constantine as well, and that was taken up by then John Delano in Hellblazer series of comics, which has gone on and on and on in a really good way. And so anyone interested in comics should really check those out as well as check out the TV show.
And one of the points that Daniel Cerrone actually made was that essentially once Hellblazer started as a comic book, it ran all the way to the end of its run without any breaks. So, over 350 comics, I think it was, without any breaks at all. And this show takes place roughly at issue 1. You meet Constantine about the same age he was in issue 1 of the comic, and they have all that stuff to explore. Hopefully, if the series keeps running, so go check it out. And I think with that we can probably get on to our review for the week. Anything else from the news you want to cover? Or
no, I think that is it. And I think with all that talk about Constantine, we should move on to talking about Gotham.
Excellent. So this week it's episode 6 of Gotham, Spirit of the Goat. Can't believe we're already on 6 episodes of the show. It's been excellent so far. So this episode was written by Ben Edlund, who I know as the creator of The Tick. Definitely a favourite of my house. When I was a kid, he did the live-action version and obviously the cartoon version of that. He was involved in Angel. He was involved in Supernatural as the showrunner for that show for many years. And it's been directed by TJ Scott, so another returning director for the show. He did episode 4, which was Arkham, which we really liked, as you may have heard on our podcast. And this time he's directing Spirit of the Goat. Do you want to give us a synopsis, John?
Yeah. The murder of a wealthy young lady, the eldest sibling in a wealthy family, is displayed on a bridge in Gotham and bears all the hallmarks of a 10-year-old case previously thought to be closed. The previous investigation surrounds a centuries-old bogeyman superstition known as Spirit of the Goat, which was brought to a close, or thought to be, by Harvey Bullock and his partner, the detective Dix. Despite Harvey Bullock having shot the perpetrator, known by his nickname as Milky, the case literally comes back to haunt Harvey Bullock, who is now investigating a new series of murders with Jim Gordon, as they try to find connections between the old and the new series of murders. In the meantime, the Major Crimes Unit, the MCU, finally move on their suspicions of Jim Gordon, as Renee Montoya and Crispus Allen obtain a warrant for his arrest, after they find a witness who places Jim at the docks and also in possession of a gun. However, unbeknownst to Jim Gordon and the MCU and Harvey Bullock, as he is placed in cuffs, he has a very old friend and will likely have ramifications for Jim Gordon and all his associations into future episodes.
Yeah. Wow. What an ending to that episode. Overall, this is a really good episode. I'm delighted to see Ben Edlund take on the writing of this episode. I've loved many of his stuff before, and he's done a really good job of doing a very different episode this time. For me, this felt like a very different episode of Gotham, but a really cool one. I like getting a bit of more revelation about who Harvey Bullock is as a character and what he was like 10 years in the past. Loved getting that revelation about him. Really enjoyed this episode and bringing the MCU back, our favourites.
Yeah, absolutely. Always good to see the MCU.
Nice to see Montoya and Allen back in here, and you don't mess with Montoya and Allen, definitely.
Not at all.
What do you think of the episode?
Yeah, I mean, my impressions on this is that, again, I thought it was a really solid, a really strong episode. And actually one in which I think the investigation really could stand on its own 2 feet without any serialized elements to it. I thought the case of the Spirit of the Goat was really good, really creepy, had enough twists and turns that it could have actually just been an episodic episode. It didn't necessarily need those serialized elements to me. So that I really, really enjoyed. I think this is, without a shadow of a doubt, Harvey Bullock as a character, his best episode. And it's really good to see Donal Logue's range coming out. He's done a lot of the comedic element and so on, and now we really see him in a very different light, and I loved seeing that. I love that little kind of backstory element to Harvey Bullock. And then I think the other aspect of this is that who says we can't have a crossover with other DC shows? I mean, firstly, it's a fairly superstitious, as I said in my synopsis, bogeyman kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. So
that links, it surely must link to Constantine. You could have that element, as we talked about in our news.
Maybe. Now, I will say, this is not a supernatural character, whereas everything in Constantine is actually supernatural. Obviously the investigation goes on and they find out it's not supernatural, but the Spirit of the Goat concept absolutely could have been used differently.
But I agree, it's not supernatural, but...
And the point here is we have got our crossover. We've got TJ Scott, the director of this episode, who has directed an episode of Constantine as well. So there is a crossover, right?
There is a crossover. And there could be in the future. Sometime.
Mm-hmm.
Season 2, Season 3. I'm being optimistic. Season 4.
Absolutely. We've got Jim Corrigan, the cop, coming up this week on Constantine. He's a well-known character in the DC universe who's a cop as well. He could pop over. You never know.
Absolutely. And of course, that pesky green Q showed up again.
Yeah.
On the side of the skyscrapers.
I know.
You had the green Q. I am still convinced it's Quillen Farmer, but it showed up there with no reference to Quillen Farmer, no reference to any form of pharmaceutical company. So maybe it is a Queen Consolidated.
I have a feeling it might have been an establishing shot that was filmed, and then they realised that there could be a connection to Queen and left it in, to Queen Industries and left it in. It's a very good possibility that they just used the same shot again and then went, oh, okay, actually, maybe we'll keep it.
It's their Gotham office. Exactly.
People seem to think that it's connected, so we'll do it. I still think Quillen. I'm saying Quillen. I think it was Bruno Heller that mentioned that he's wondering himself. He's wondering whether the art department have just have done something a bit fun for themselves that he wasn't aware of. Really, is the way he's put it.
Well, you really have to catch it now. But yeah, that green Q pops up again.
But once you know it's there, you definitely won't miss it. Definitely.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. So kicking off the episode, kicking off the investigation, we start off with a 10 years ago in Gotham.
Yeah, I am the spirit of the goat, intones a man who keeps repeating it.
Yeah.
And that man is Randall Milky.
Yeah. What did you think when you see him with the mask on his head? Did you think Batman? I definitely thought, my gosh, this guy has big pointy ears. He's got half his face covered by a black mask, and he's got eye holes in it. He's wearing a black mask with bat ears on the top of it. That's a bit close.
It did look Batman-y, but he would have been called Goatman.
That's true.
Which doesn't quite have the same ring to it, I don't think.
Striking fear into the hearts of...
Obviously could be curried, whereas bats tend not to form part of the cuisine. Yeah, I see what you mean. It did look very Batman-y with the pointy ears, and it was black as well. I definitely saw that as a reference.
But a really creepy vibe. It felt like something from Seven when he was standing in his room, looking at a mirror, smashing the mirror when he's calling out, "I am the spirit of the goat." Yeah, a really creepy kind of vibe to begin this episode.
Yeah, and he, it essentially establishes this idea that he goes and he kidnaps a lady called Shelley Lawson, and that this lady, or it's not exclusively ladies or women, but it's from wealthy families, and it's also the firstborn or to those wealthy families. Yeah. So the eldest sibling. And we see him kidnap Shelley Lawson. And there's some interesting stuff going on in the TV, which you had spotted as well. These kidnappings weren't, because there were previous ones to it, so this is again a series of these events, of these kidnappings and indeed murders. And that it's not casting a shadow over Thomas and Martha Wayne's birthday celebrations for their son Bruce, who I think they say, we kind of try to capture it, it was like 2 years old or something like that.
The way we kind of worked it out was he's roughly 12, potentially 13 in the show, and this is 10 years ago, so it's definitely a birthday celebration for their infant son, I think, is perhaps what they say. It's quite difficult to catch that little touch, but it is a birthday celebration for a kid.
And the other nice little touch there is that they've opened up the up Wayne Manor to orphans from the orphanage.
Yeah, nice little reference to Dark Knight Rises there, which is how Wayne Manor finally is preserved and released by Bruce to the orphans of the city. Yeah, it sounds like his parents would have been very happy with that as how Wayne Manor is used after Dark Knight Rises.
But we essentially then, it moves on, and this lady, this Shelley Lawson, this woman is kind of strung up almost in like semi-crucifix type position in what looks to be a theatre, an unused and abandoned theatre. There's lots of plastic sheeting everywhere. It looks sort of dusty, all that kind of thing. And here we see a younger Harvey Bullock, a younger Detective Bullock, with his then partner, Detective Dix.
Yeah, he explains the golden rule of Gotham.
We are waiting for backup.
He's got Shelley Lawson in there. If he kills her, that's 3 people we lost to this maniac.
Gotham's golden rule, Harvey. No heroes.
So there you go, no heroes. He certainly wouldn't be very happy if Superman arrived, or if Batman arrived, wouldn't he?
Absolutely. It's a really interesting thing, because actually Jim Gordon has that feeling as well. This idea of vigilantes, that he's not interested in them. He's, and we've heard Ben McKenzie say about how he doesn't think that Jim Gordon has intentionally wanted to create a superhero or anti-hero such as the Batman. So it's almost that Detective Dix and Detective Gordon have similar views on this, that it should be down to the law and detectives investigating cases.
Whereas in this instance, Harvey Bullock is a much more heroic character than we've seen him with Jim Gordon.
Yeah, big time. And I think that's one of the great things about this episode is you see, it's almost like an untainted, this younger version who's got much more aspiration of what he can do and what he can become and how he can change things. And yeah, I mean, it's Detective Dix is the one who is like saying, hold back, what's the golden rule? What's the golden rule? No heroes. Let me call for backup rather than go charging in. This is preserve yourself before doing anything heroic. And it's a real nice look at this character because, it suggests that he's gone through some really serious stuff that's undermined all those youthful and well-intentioned aspirations beforehand.
Yeah, but I definitely wouldn't say that he's become like Detective Dix or anything like that. That character is still a good police officer. He's still showing Harvey the ropes. He's still telling him the right things to do in the city. He's definitely not talking like as if Harvey's learnt all his bad habits from this character.
Yeah.
Harvey seems to really respect him, as we hear later on in the episode. He's paying for his stay in the retirement home, essentially. Harvey is really respectful of this character, and he's learnt a lot from him. He's definitely not the bad influence on Harvey. This isn't where Harvey got all his bad.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things is that in apprehending Randall Milkey, who's been undone by the spirit of the goat, what we're seeing or thinking to be this supernatural element, this curse almost, is, whilst he gets 4 shots into Milky, does Harvey Bullock, at the same time, Detective Dix gets kind of taken down.
Yeah.
As you say, we see him later in a home, which I think seems to be more to do with the bottle than the bullet, and so you get this impression that this partnership that we see probably dissolves quite soon after, and who knows who Harvey Bullock has teamed up with then, who and where he may actually get some of those bad habits as you talk about. But definitely Detective Dix doesn't necessarily seem to be the one giving him those bad habits that we might associate with him now. He's actually just saying, be a smart detective and don't be a hero.
Absolutely.
Call for backup. Do the investigation.
Absolutely.
It's not just close it as quickly as you can by getting the wrong person. That seems to be different advice being given at some point in Bullock's career.
Yeah, it's great to see this kind of side of Harvey, I think, and it kind of gives a bit of hope to the relationship or the friendship. Hopefully, that will build between Gordon and Bullock. It wouldn't it be great if these two characters were fighting Gotham's villains together rather than poor Gordon, who has to battle for every single inch in every single case he works on. Really good to see that side of him. And it kind of gives, as I say, it gives a little bit of hope that potentially Jim might be able to influence Harvey and bring him back to that side of his personality.
Definitely. And then we kind of get to 10 years later with Harvey Bullock kind of looking pretty shell-shocked as there is this lady, a new case, an Amanda Hastings, who is again in this semi-crucifix position on a bridge just outside Gotham. She comes from money, and she's the first daughter and sibling for this couple, the Hastings.
Mm-hmm.
And you see he is shell-shocked. We see that this flashback, and it's come back to haunt him in the present day, 10 years on.
Yeah, it's interesting that there is a flashback being brought into this. When we talked to Ben McKenzie and had the interview with him, he was asked the question about will we see more of his past as an army an army guy, essentially, as an army officer in the war, and he kind of called out that he doesn't like flashbacks. He doesn't like the idea of that being a hinge or a crutch for a TV show. In this case, as a flashback, I think it worked quite well. This idea of seeing a past case coming back to haunt them. Of course, they're going to have to use some form of flashback. You can't just call out or read out a sheet that says, "Oh, this has happened before." Yeah, it's nice to see the kind of flashback that they use here.
I agree. I think in this case the flashback worked, and I think sort of just from how it was shot, it didn't look different. I mean, it's like, say, for example, with Arrow, the tone of the flashbacks in Arrow are kind of done. It's a more sort of faded out colour. It looks different. This didn't really look any different. It was the same kind of tone to the shooting of the TV show, I should say. It didn't try and do anything stylistically different. It was still in Gotham. It was done very much the same. It's just you had Harvey Bullock paired with someone different. And it kind of felt, I think, quite natural. But I think at the same time, it's maybe this is the first time it's happened.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's good to see those kind of flashbacks. If a flashback at least like that, maybe once. I wouldn't like to see this as being the opening of every episode. Definitely, I wouldn't like them to over rely on it. We're already in a prequel. We're starting to see the development of characters from this point onwards, and I'd like to continue to see that development rather than a bit of a backstory on how they got to this stage. Harvey, unfortunately, is just one of those characters that you really needed to see to see how far he's fallen, I suppose, from what he was in the past.
Yeah, I think some of these characters here really do cry out for some element of backstory being shown on the show in flashback.
Yeah,
perhaps. Maybe an entire episode in flashback. Who knows? How it could be done.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure that Jim Gordon needs to be one of those people. I think Harvey Bullock, yes. I would say Alfred Pennyworth, yes. Given that this is an Alfred Pennyworth from Earth 1 comic book in a sense, where there is a military background, that maybe his relationship with Thomas and Martha Wayne's was not just pure "I'm a butler, you're my master," that there was something a bit more knowing. I think in Earth 1, Thomas and Alfred had served together. I think Alfred had been brought on as actually a security guard and security protection. That is something different that, other than some of the comics, that's not been explored in the TV show or films before. Yeah. That is worthy, I think, of a flashback. Yeah. I think Harvey Bullock's fall from grace almost is worthy of flashbacks. Jim's, I'm not too sure. In some ways,
I'm certain. I'm 100%. I don't want to see a flashback for Jim Gordon. No. He's come to the city. He's fully formed. I don't want to see a flashback for him. With Harvey, you're right. I don't want to see the fall from grace either. I think it's pretty obvious. Again, it's something that they may just use as a filler episode, really, because Harvey didn't fall from grace. He just got eaten away. I don't think you need to see that. Showing a piece of, a couple of minutes before the opening of this episode, which show you that he experienced this. The whole case originally terrified him anyway, because he did feel, should I be questioning this? Should I be thinking it is supernaturally involved? These people seem to have a strange connection, and are being slaughtered and murdered very ritualistically. Is there some form of connection here that I should be concerned about? It's a good reason to do a flashback for
absolutely
for a minute or two.
No, I agree. Yeah. I didn't necessarily mean a fall from grace. I meant but not slow degradation of his soul.
Absolutely. I don't want to see how he discovered his hat for the first time, or how he got his trench coat. It's not necessary. I'm sure he bought them.
He walked into a shop.
He bought them at the police surplus store. I'm sure.
I think the other thing as well is that ultimately, it's the first time it's been done, and I mean, what I would say is that another TV show currently on at the moment, which I enjoy, may have overused the technique. Don't get me wrong, I'm really enjoying Arrow, but I know in reviewing the first episode of season 3, okay, it's nice to see a flashback that's not on the island and it's in Hong Kong, but nonetheless it's another flashback, and it seems to be that this is a technique that's being hinged upon by that TV show, which I'm not entirely sure it needs to be done. And I think overuse of it can lead to fatigue in it, in anything. So in this sense, I think they're fine to do and justified in doing a flashback. It should not be used as a crutch, as Ben McKenzie said, to just try and do something.
I think what you're trying to say is Arrow has failed the flashback. But back to the investigation.
But not
at
the
hand.
Flash.
Not the Flash. Yes, failed the flashback, but not the Flash. But back to the investigation itself. So essentially it takes them to the home of Miss Hastings' parents, with a very dubious looking psychiatrist sitting in the corner watching over them the whole time.
Yeah. Mr. Hastings seems to have some kind of issues being looked at by their psychotherapist. He's constantly grasping his hand. So whilst Harvey Bullock and Jim Gordon are there trying to find out, the last movements of their daughter, he's just clenching his fists and isn't really saying much at all. His wife is filled with tranquilizers, of which Harvey wants to get in on a bit of that action, it would seem. And it's mainly the therapist who's kind of talking for them. But it's, this family obviously has issues, or obviously is completely shell-shocked by the death and murder of their daughter.
Yeah, but again, it brings up a great side of Harvey Bullock where, he realizes there's a connection between the Milky case and this one, where Randall Milky was able to get into people's homes because he had janitorial access to each of the homes. So potentially this killer has the same kind of access. He realizes that, the psychiatrist who says, he's not really himself about Mr. Hastings, where Dr. Mark says he's not really himself, he can't really get himself together after this. And very empathetically, Harvey Bullock says that no one recovers from something like this. She just lost a child. That's a very different Harvey Bullock than we've seen in the last 5 episodes, and really good one to see.
But something that brings us back to the old Harvey Bullock, and I love this. It's like I'm getting that sense of deja vu, acid flashbacks. It's a great. I love it. It's like it is this mix of the Harvey Bullock that we saw 10 years ago at the start of the episode, mixed in with the Harvey Bullock that we saw last week in episode 5, Viper. And it's a real nice mix that they've got going on, that he comes out with a great one-liner like that, but at the same time comes and shows his empathy with the actual people who have been affected by the crime, rather than simply trying to just sort of get through to solving the case and tick it off and check it off and move on to the next one.
Absolutely.
It's a really nice little mix, I think, of different Harvey Bullocks here. But I love that line. I really like that line.
Yeah, no, that's really good. It's really good. But he goes to the autopsy for this murdered victim as well, which is again hugely unusual for Bullock. He usually kind of takes a basic through line of what he thinks might have happened and then finds somebody that fits the bill. In this case, he's gone to the actual autopsy. He makes a huge leap as to the fact that this could be the same killer, and realizes there could be the Lincoln Penny sewn inside the victim's neck, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is again,
it's the old MO of Milky that he remembers.
And again, this is actual detective work from Detective Harvey Bullock, which is again great to see. Yeah. People have made a kind of comment about the Lincoln Penny, that there is a giant Lincoln Penny in the Batcave apparently, or in Wayne Manor there's a giant Lincoln Penny, and they're wondering if there's a connection between those two things.
This whole thing as well in the autopsy is about is it a copycat? Or is it a new person? Or somehow did Milky not die? Mm-hmm. It's still trying to figure out, is this a complete superstition thing? And we have a crossover with Constantine. Or is it something else where, it's just simply a copycat? And it is just this whole thing of Harvey Bullock stood there at the autopsy going, make an incision at the base of his head, top of his neck, and the penny It's, they left this out of the files.
Yeah.
They thought that giving all these kind of details to the press and getting it out there in the public would attract, in some ways, admirers to do copycat killings. I think Essen calls it copycat porn.
Yeah.
This element that we ultimately find out that maybe this isn't a copycat.
Yeah, like the whole scene really reminded me of something out of David Fincher's Zodiac, which is essentially a police officer, police department based crime drama where they're keeping elements of the murders from the press so that copycat killers don't get on board, so they can try and find the real killer, essentially, which is obviously what they tried to do here. There were 3 victims of Randall Milkey in the 10 years in the past, and they obviously kept some of the details out so they could actually find the real criminal, so that somebody else didn't just hang people up and kill them in the same way. But I really like that. I really like the interesting side of it. But the real reason why Captain Sarah Essen once again is jumping on the bandwagon here, and Harvey wants to get this solved as soon as possible, is because of the targeting of the 1%ers, targeting of the children of the rich people in the city.
Absolutely.
So once again, we see Sarah Essen and her concern about her political career, her career in the police force, and again Harvey, he does say it himself, so it's quite interesting.
And so basically, Essen says to go and visit Detective Dix and to get some further information, to squeeze everything they can from this to get information on that. So they go to visit Detective Dix, who's in a convalescence home, just to ask him about the goat case and what's going on,
and just whether he released the information about the Liberty Penny to anybody else as well. It's kind of it's one of those pieces of information that was hidden. Only 3 people knew about the Liberty Penny. There was Detective Dix, Detective Bullock, and the person who did the autopsy, essentially.
Yeah, Hayes.
Yeah.
They call him Hayes in this. Yeah, and it's basically he comes out with a great line. I don't have a copycat killer, a lone killer. You have a conspiracy. Which is really interesting.
Yeah.
He's like, he almost kind of knows that there's no copycat killer here going on, that there's no kind of lone killer going on, that there is a conspiracy going on, and where is that coming from? Who's driving it?
And unlike me watching it, he never said, you have a supernatural, you have the spirit of the goat possessing somebody else. That hopped into my head immediately. Once you've eliminated all the possibilities, which Harvey seems to have, I would have assumed that then you kind of go, well, are you sure it's not somebody possessing these people and making them kill?
Exactly.
But there's no time for that at all with Detective Dix. It's what's the next logical thing that would happen. So obviously I wouldn't make a great detective.
But it's really good. And it obviously later on in the episode gets Harvey Bullock thinking, it's chimed with him that there's something that they've missed or that they've overlooked. But one of the other thing as well that we get from Detective Dix is that he gives us a bit more insight into Harvey Bullock, and he says, watch out for him to Jim Gordon. He thinks he's a white knight jumping into the fray. And it's, as we were talking about before, it's a really interesting side of Harvey Bullock.
Yeah.
It really kind of chimes with this element that maybe Harvey Bullock could have gone down a different path in his police career.
Yeah.
And that is really, really interesting.
I love how incredulous Jim Gordon is. Are you sure you're talking about the right guy here? Harvey Bullock, yeah. That's really good. It's really good. And it's like, he always thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. That's because I'm in a room full of idiots, is Harvey's response, which is great. Yeah, really, really good. But really good seeing Detective Dix. He's a character actor that's been in many things, from like My Cousin Vinny to a ton of mob films. A really, really good actor. It's really good to see him on the show,
Absolutely. And we also see the caring side of Harvey Bullock, where as you said before, this idea that he's getting the dirty mags for Detective Dix.
Yeah, but he does also pay for his stay as well, which is really important. They as I said earlier on, it shows that lighter side and that nicer side of Harvey Bullock. If you get on his right side, he'll obviously take care of you. Yeah, it's really, really good.
So then we're treated to the next victim, a Miss Amber Coughlin, who gets abducted by the spirit of the goat, the guy in the goat mask.
Yeah.
The black mask. Oh no, well, I don't want to say too many references that bear no relationship the Batman mask. Yeah, no, exactly. So, she is abducted by the guy with the black mask over his head that looks like a goat. We get to find out some of the suspects' names that could be involved in being the goat in this case. And that comes to us through Enigma, who has gone and looked at all the types of workmen and maintenance people who've been working on and servicing the Hastings building from previously. And basically all the other kind of workmen have kind of been off work or ill, on sick leave, except for this one guy called Raymond Earl. And so Enigma, in a sense, comes up with the main suspects, of which Raymond Earl seems to be the most obvious to the detectives.
But once again, with Enigma, he knows exactly who it is, and he's really impressed with the fact that Jim Gordon has clearly read his report as well. It's not even the fact that he knows who the answer is. He just didn't give out the answer. He doesn't say Raymond Earl straight away, that's your guy. He gives the details behind it and allows Jim to solve the puzzle of which one could possibly be the murderer. So we get a bit more in this episode, definitely, of Enigma.
Yeah, there's a little bit more of a focus, a bit more exploration on Edward Nygma, and with a particular colleague, certainly in Kristen Kringle, who is obviously an office worker who's filing case files and so on. But in a sense, we see his awkwardness around people, and actually people's impatience with him. So we know Harvey Bullock kind of has got absolutely no time for Enigma. He's like, get to the point, stop dealing with me with all these riddles, for want of a better phrase. And we see here, again, another co-worker in Kristen Kringle, who is like, all these riddles, it's kind of annoying, and you see the impatience in it.
Yeah, it seems to be a genuine feeling of all of the GCPD from the moment at the beginning of the episode when Nygma is the one that wakes Harvey out of his memory or out of his flashback by constantly tapping him on the shoulder, going, "Do you give up? Do you give up of that riddle that I gave you? You haven't solved it yet." He's looking for acceptance, definitely, but he's not getting it from anybody in the GCPD other than Jim Gordon, really. When he's trying to solve the problem of the filing system for Kristen Kringle, she doesn't see it as a problem. This is her workplace. She's the one that sorted it all out, and Ed's trying to impose his logic upon her, which is quite a funny little scene, I suppose. But yeah, it's not really accepted by Miss Kringle at all.
No, I mean, it's a really interesting point, and I think another one is just Edward Nygma's fascination with things. So he talks about, "I'd really like to meet your parents," or "I would love meeting your parents," to Kristen Kringle, which is kind of creepy in its sense. But his take on it, his view on it is that, well, it's like Kris Kringle. So most people have either gotten rid of the surname out of embarrassment, whereas your parents have kept it, and the icing on the cake is they've called you Kristen Kringle, and it's kind of like that fascinates him.
Absolutely, and considering Kristen was probably had quite bad experiences because of her name over the time. She probably doesn't find it very funny, but
she hates him right now.
He loves that there's a little enigma behind her name.
Yeah. She hates him, absolutely hates him right now for bringing that up. She kind of like, this is why I file myself away in the filing room. To just stay away from all that. Yeah. But again, the other thing as well that we get to see is maybe a slightly darker element to Edward Nygma, where he says, chatting to Kristen, "Isn't it fascinating that someone resurrects a centuries-old bogeyman?" Mm-hmm. And there's that darker element to this fascination that Edward Nygma had. It's like, he's intelligent, he wants to learn, but he is fascinated with some of the more dubious, darker elements, and maybe that's why he's in forensics. It gets him close up at an autopsy or something like that. So there's some really good exploration here of Edward Nygma, a bit further than we've seen previously. Absolutely. Which I really like. The only bit I'm not entirely sure I like is him holding a mug with a question mark. A bit too far.
I think on the nose is probably it's a bit too far, definitely. But then he goes and destroys Kringle's record system, which also is a bit too far for her. She's very unhappy with him after that. I don't think he's ever going to get to meet her parents.
No. It'd be interesting to see whether anything comes back in future episodes on that. I mean, certainly I had a brief little look to see whether there are any Kristen Kringles in the DC verse. I didn't see anything other than Santa Claus. So,
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
This is our Christmas episode now. So back onto the investigation, I suppose. So they've identified Raymond Earl. He's kidnapped Amber Coughlin, as I'll call her in the real Irish version. She's been kidnapped. She's been taken to the same abandoned theatre that Harvey and Detective Dix were at 10 years beforehand, and now it's Jim and Harvey there, who both rush in together. Very similar to Harvey's original attitude, but now he has a partner that's willing to go with him into this situation. And realistically, only for Jim's intervention, Harvey could have been killed being pushed down those stairs by Raymond Earl.
It's a great fight sequence. I really loved sort of the tussle between the two, and Harvey Bullock getting kind of wrapped up in that sort of polythene sheeting. And it's a really great finishing move from Jim Gordon to kind of put the goat down, basically, as well. But some of the sort of dialogue from Harvey Bullock, this thing that haunts him. And you really get that here, where Raymond Earl, as the goat, says, "You'll never stop the goat. I'll always come back." And Harvey Bullock is there going, "Stop saying that."
Yeah.
Like, he really just wants to put this to bed. He thought he had done with Milky in shooting him. He thought it was over, and all of a sudden this is back. And you can see the annoyance, the frustration that this case has suddenly sort of opened up again. But they finally get their man, and they are there, and he's caught. They look at interrogating him, but ultimately there is no connection between him or Milky. And Harvey has it here that there's something that is missing, that they're missing something. They've also both got mental illness and so on. And this is when they suddenly, when Harvey, I should say, suddenly hits upon it, where he sees that fist clenching. Like you saw with Mr. Hastings. I think it's Robert Hastings. And he suddenly makes this link to the therapist, Dr. Marks.
But once again, and I hope this comes back in future episodes. Once again, it's hugely important to remember here. Harvey found the person that caused these crimes. He's found the perpetrator. Normally, that's Harvey done. He just sticks him in a prison and then lets the lawyers sort it out. That's kind of it. Harvey stays there watching this guy because he doesn't want the case to come back and bite him like the previous one has. Essentially, he wants to find out, why is this happening? Why is this guy, who doesn't seem to be of the right mental ability, which would never have concerned him before, why is this guy the actual person that is the killer? And if there's any possibility that this person isn't the right person that he's caught here, he wants to know about it. So that's why he stays watching him the whole time. He's staying to make sure that he's got his right man, which is very unlike the Harvey we've seen for the last 5 episodes.
And the great thing is that as soon as it clicks, he comes out with this great little line.
Holy Ghost on a bicycle.
Which is such an Irish phrase, but slightly twisted.
And slightly referencing Batman 66 as well.
Yeah, Holy Ghost on a bicycle. Well, in Ireland, we would say Christ on a bike. I think is pretty much a phrase that we'd use more often. But
I kept thinking of Robin from Batman 66 as well. That is like, holy flaming arrows Batman. This was kind of like Holy Ghost on a bicycle, and I kind of thought,
oh, very good. Yeah, very possible.
So it's a great little line. It's a great little reference to a well-used Irish saying, definitely.
Yeah, I've used it quite a bit.
I think we all have. We all need to. There's always a moment where you need to say that. And it's also, I think, a nice little reference back to Batman 66 as well.
Yeah. So Harvey realizes the connection between all of these murders is the psychiatrist we met at the beginning, Dr. Marks, that essentially she has been guiding them all to to kill the one percenters, to kill the children of the one percenters, I suppose. So we've got another vigilante, our third vigilante in the series so far. She's essentially saying that she's setting things up so the goat will become this character that strikes fear into the heart of the citizens of Gotham, particularly the one percenters, and get them. She essentially says that Gotham is screaming out for a character like this, for someone that will stand up for the little man and will protect them from the ruling classes. So another way of looking at it. Yeah.
I think she calls it an act of therapy for Gotham.
Yeah.
That it manages to be that cathartic release for them when they know that someone ultimately is on their side, is making the boss feel uncomfortable in a sense.
Yeah.
And it's like, she makes the point, don't we all like to devour the rich, I think it is, or eat the rich? We all want to do that. And it's a really good vigilante moment, but it's a progression from the others where it is behind a mask, and maybe the whole look of that mask becomes a bit more symbolic, that it looks like a bat with the pointy ears and it being black and so on, even though it is the spirit of the goat. Maybe that has different connotations now, but all these new vigilantes that have come in, there's a progression on the theme of what a vigilante means, and that's a really interesting point and development that's coming across in these episodes. Whether it's starting off from the Balloon Man, which is in a sense very, I mean, it wasn't. So far, it's not our favorite episode, but
I think it's the worst episode so far this season. I think it's clear. We've clearly said that, definitely, yeah.
But it introduced the concept, and it started it down that path. And then we came to the next development of that concept.
Yeah, in episode 5 in Viper, we got to see the guy who was essentially killing people using drugs and trying to kill the board members of Wayne Enterprises. So he was trying to take them out. He's trying to take out the pharmaceutical company. So that was the next level of vigilantism we had, yeah. And
then now, obviously, we have someone who decides that they need a symbol to make their point, which is... as well, or one that is much darker than the idea of balloons, or it's a much darker way of doing it.
Well, Danny Cannon certainly wasn't lying to us in New York Comic Con when he said that people are that vigilantes will appear across the city when people can't even trust their own neighbors, their statesmen, their mayors, their cops. Vigilantism is gonna grow in the city more and more. Definitely wasn't lying to us then, was he, John?
Not at all. But ultimately, Dr. Marks gets taken down, shot in the leg by Harvey Bullock, and taken in.
And for the first time, Harvey actually wins his fight against an old man, which is quite a turn for him.
Yeah, she sets on Robert Hastings onto Harvey Bullock, and
at least he didn't have a Zimmer frame this time, I suppose. So maybe Harvey had a little advantage there. But yeah, that's the overall kind of the overall investigation. Is sealed with the capture of Dr. Marks. One of the other big pieces from this episode, and it's pretty huge, and I know we didn't talk about it earlier on, but Victoria Cartagena and Chris. One of the other elements of the episode is really the investigation of Montoya and Allen into Jim Gordon. This is coming to a head. We didn't see them for the last couple of weeks. 2 episodes, I think they've been out of the MCU.
Yeah. This is definitely the serialized element of this week's episode, which is this ongoing investigation by Montoya and Allen around the disappearance of Oswald Cobblepot. They think his murder, his death by and at the hands of Jim Gordon. And for them, they find a witness. They are trawling the docks, looking for potential witnesses to this act that's gone down. I presume most people that disappear around the docks. Yeah. They probably get weighted down and off it goes out to sea, where all the crabs and the fishes start to enjoy a little tasty snack. But they're going around and they come across a witness who, clear as day, can point that it was Jim Gordon who he saw on the docks take out Oswald Cobblepot. So it is a witness to his killing. And they say, we've got Jim Gordon. And the homeless bum kind of says, he had the eyes, he looked like an ice-cold killer with ice running through his veins.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a serious indictment of what potentially the witness, but also maybe what Montoya and Allen think at this moment in time of Jim Gordon.
Yeah, absolutely. As we know, obviously, this was him trying to convince Oswald that he's giving him his life back and allowing him to live as long as he doesn't come back to Gotham. He's trying to be deadly serious and convince Oswald that this is the wrong place for him. He needs to get out. Whereas obviously from a distance, that looks very different. Really do like the idea of this scene, definitely. Something that we talked about after we watched the episode. It would have been really nice to see Victoria Cartagena and Andrew Stewart Jones in one other episode, maybe looking for clues or looking for another witness potentially and failing and not finding that. Christopher Allen does make the point that they have 24 hours left, or else the MCU is going to have to give up on the case, essentially.
Yeah, they say they've been trawling the docks as well.
But rather than saying it would have been nice to see one quick scene from them. But definitely what you can see from this is something that Victoria Cartagena told us in her interview about Renee Montoya. She told us that once she gets the bit in her teeth, she'll never give up on a case like this. So I'm not sure. Yes, Christopher Allen thinks the MCU are going to give up on this in 24 hours, but I'm not sure whether Renee Montoya would have given up on this case without knowing for absolute certain what the end of it was going to be.
Well, and she's invested in this personally as well. I mean, just quickly, I completely agree. I think it would have been nice to have seen this over maybe a few previous episodes, this scene, because all of a sudden it just potentially seems that there's an awful lot going in that opening scene that we see of Renee Montoya and Christopher Allen. I can see why it's done like that, because we haven't seen anything previously, but it just all feels very compacted to the point where it feels like they've shown up, and even with that explanatory dialogue, have suddenly happened across the person who actually saw them, and it seems a bit convenient. But
I think if they'd replaced one of the 5 endings to last week's episode with the scene of the two of them looking down the docks trying to find a witness, it might have helped. Yeah, something like that.
But Renee Montoya is personally invested in this, and I suppose that's all down to Barbara Keane. And, this is why she has the bit between her teeth in relation to this case. One of the nice complementary aspects in this episode to the Montoya and Allen story is Jim and Barbara Keane. And we see them very early on in the episode in Barbara Keane's flat. They've had a falling out, and we see them going down that road of recovery, beginning to build the bridges and make up, essentially. And I love what Barbara Keane says here, where it's, all I'm asking for, and to be honest, at this stage I thought she was going to say half of everything, but she didn't. But she carries on and says, all I'm asking for is half of what you carry.
Yeah.
She wants to be there for Jim, support him, and be his backup in this world.
Yeah.
He has another partner in this world. It's not just Harvey Bullock, it's Barbara Keane.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. Jim's support system was collapsing for the first couple of episodes, where he couldn't trust Harvey particularly because he hadn't told him that he hadn't killed Oswald. He couldn't trust the MCU, who technically should be his closest allies on the force. And he started that he couldn't tell Barbara anything because she was going to report them to the papers as her way of helping him. So he stopped trusting in her. He wasn't telling her about anything about Oswald Cobblepot, something that weighed hugely heavy on his mind. You get the feeling that this couple are, do tell each other everything before he gets to Gotham, He says that he arrived in Gotham to become a cop, and this city needs something else, and he's finding it hugely difficult dealing with the pressures of being a cop in Gotham now, So it's nice to have a scene between him and Barbara Keane where she's essentially reiterating, I'm here to support you. You don't have to tell me everything, but tell me enough to take some of that pressure away from you, you know?
Absolutely. And I think this all links then nicely into a really great scene between Barbara Keene and Rennie Montoya on the steps of the Gotham City Police Department, where you see this battle of Barbara Keene in total support of Jim and saying to her former ex-lover, you must be wrong, saying, you need to stop going after Jim, keep an open mind. And you see then Rennie Montoya saying, it's too late. Who he knows, what he knows is going to kill you. And advises her to get out of Gotham, that they have got this warrant issued for his arrest. And you see the pain in Rennie Montoya's face when she kind of says, it's who he knows, it's what he knows that will get you killed.
Yeah, absolutely. You also see in Erin Richards' Barbara Keene, you also see the pain that she's going through, because she's also saying, not only relax on the investigation to Rennie, she's also saying to her, I'll give you everything you need. I'll watch everything that's happening with him. I'll give you all the information that I possibly can about him. Don't give up on him yet. She's trying to be as supportive for Jim as she can as well.
Yeah, they are both trying to protect someone they care deeply about, if not love.
Yeah. But it leads to the big closing scene of the episode, really, when Barbara goes back and tells Jim that Montoya has the warrant. Jim essentially is in a corner and can't run. He can't get out of there. He tells Barbara to leave as well, but she also can't leave. She wants to stay right at Jim's side. And then we have Alan and Montoya arrive at the door.
I can't run. Can't run.
James Gordon, you're under arrest for the murder of Oswald Chesterfield Cobblepot. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in a court of law.
Yeah, don't mess with Montoya and Alan, I think.
No, definitely. I mean, it's a really important piece, and it's very telling that Jim Gordon says, I can't run, and repeats that. Montoya and Alan are there. They are there on business. Mm-hmm. It's like, we've come to arrest you. You are corrupt. You are untrustworthy, and everything is pointing towards you being the killer of a good old source of information and snitch, Oswald Cobblepot. That you're in the pocket of Carmine Falcone, and you'll know better than some of these people you're pretending, maybe they feel, you're trying to hunt down and arrest. And this is a really, really good piece. And I mean, this ultimately then builds to the finale between Rennie Montoya and Crispus Allen bringing in Jim into the precinct in front of everyone. Essen getting very territorial about her boys. What are you doing? You see this tension blow up between the GCPD and the MCU, mm-hmm. or should I say the homicide unit and the MCU. You see that with Harvey Bullock as well.
Absolutely.
And what builds is something that we've also then been seeing play out over the course of this episode is Oswald Cobblepot preparing for something and meeting his mother.
Yeah.
In some really, really great scenes, I think, which build to him showing up at the door of GCPD's precinct.
Yeah. Just to quickly call out the scene with Carol Kane as Mrs. Cobblepot. Don't forget, John. If Crispus Allen can't get away with it, you can't. The scene with Oswald Cobblepot and his mother is very creepy. I don't know how to even describe how creepy it feels. And particularly within that scene is that Oswald is actually calling out that he thinks of Jim Gordon as a friend, as well as as all the other creepy elements that are going on in there. Oswald Cobblepot calls out that he's now has a friend who is a police officer, and he's going to show me the right way. And that's just creepy in and of itself. Let alone all the other elements, like this section from Mrs. Cobblepot when they arrive back at the door.
I don't know why you always think I'm running off with some painted lady. I don't even date.
Why you don't call your mother in all this time? I tell you why. You got tangled in some hussy's demon purse.
Mother, there was no hussy. Only betrayal and savagery and... all I wanted was a little respect.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great scene, and it's a great series of dialogue. And I just think Carol Kane is absolutely excellent.
Mesmerizing,
and
really.
brilliant as Gertrude Cobblepot. And this dialogue between both her and her son Oswald is really good. And I mean, it is just great. You get the hurt of betrayal and savagery from Oswald Cobblepot. You get this switch of where his mum Gertrude is thinking he's done something wrong. He's out with, women of the night and so on, and he makes the point is, I don't even date. And he gradually gets her support, as she kind of says, they do these things because they resent you. And you see this support of a mother towards her sociopathic son. I mean, it's so sweet. But you see the bond that they have, that, his only child and the support of his mother. And in fairness, in the other scene that they have together before Oswald turns up at the precinct where he's in the bath, that's the kind of a relationship, I was happy enough maybe with my own mother bathing me when I was 1, 2, 3 or something. Maybe at, 20 odd?
Yeah.
No, it should have stopped by now. It really, Oswald, should have stopped by now. So, I mean, this is really creepy. It really is. But again, it's the conversation that they have, that Jim is the only person that he can trust. And I do wonder, does Oswald have the notion that he trusts Jim Gordon because he thinks he understands and knows Jim's motivations? I mean, it is that idea that I was talking about in Arkham, where we had the theory that Oswald essentially set Jim down the path of that investigation, this battle between Maroni and Falcone. And the way that played out, does that mean that the reason why he trusts him is because he's seen that not only is it just simply that he spares his life at the time, which has kind of given him this element of trust and friendship that he feels towards him, but that he is someone who reads people well, and that he understands Jim's motivations, can predict that, and so therefore he feels slightly in a power position. Yeah.
Is it trust, or is it just that he can manipulate Jim Gordon, or feels he can manipulate Gordon? Yeah, but a really good scenes with Oswald again this week. This is now, I think I was going to look it up just before we went to this episode. Didn't get the chance though. Is this the 5th episode we now end with Oswald Cobblepot?
I think it might be.
So I think originally the plan for the show was that it was going to be the rise of Jim Gordon in the GCPD. Definitely, what we're seeing here is the rise of Oswald Cobblepot. He's become a huge character. The fans adore the character, and don't get me wrong, I love Robin Lord Taylor in this part. But there's a lot of episodes that are ending on the cliffhanger of what Oswald does next. Really, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So overall, that's pretty much everything in the episode that I have. Anything from yourself that you want to pull out?
I think the only other two kind of points to bring out are, first of all, we see Selena Kyle very briefly again, like we did in Viper. Yeah. She doesn't have much screen time here, does Cameron Bickendova, but she shows up at Wayne Manor.
That's right.
Steals into the room where Bruce Wayne is fast asleep, and takes a good old look at his corkboard, where he is putting all the newspaper cuttings, photographs, and so on of his own investigation.
Yeah.
And what we see again now is a new piece of the jigsaw on that corkboard, which is Mathis.
Yeah. Mathis has appeared alongside the mayor and Falcone. So has Bruce now made the connection that the three of them are in cahoots, essentially, to take down Gotham, or to control Gotham at the very least? It's very interesting.
So that's really, really interesting.
Yeah. Speaking of the Bruce Wayne in this episode, he has a very, very small scene with Alfred, where they're talking about the 1%, and essentially what looks like the some kind of journalist from E! News is talking on screen about all the 1%ers who've now gone off to their ski resorts, and Alfred says, maybe you should do that, Master Bruce.
Yeah, you're one of those.
yeah, and Bruce says, well, why would he take me? I've got nothing to be taken from. That's a beautiful, heartbreaking little moment with Alfred, where he goes, where there's just a look on his face where it's kind of, well, there's me, I love you, and I'm caring for you.
No,
I'd be heartbroken if you were gone too,
The expression on Sean Pertwee's face, on Alfred's face, I should say, is just tragic and expressive. I mean, it's a great little scene, and I mean, just from that expression, you get so much of the hurt that has just been inflicted on Alfred by Bruce Wayne, by saying that I have no one. And it just screams out, you have me, Master Bruce. You have me.
Yeah.
Really excellent piece of understated acting, I think, there from Sean Pertwee. Absolutely brilliant. And it just stands out in that little scene, because they're not really in it that much at all, but that little scene is immensely important to the character of Alfred, I think.
Definitely. Anything else for the episode?
No, I think that's all from me. I think, this is another good episode. I really enjoyed it, and I do think it's one where the investigation certainly could have been a standalone. And I mean, I suppose that's testament to why we've talked so much about the actual investigation, is that you want to find out who is or what is the spirit of the goat. It starts off as being a supernatural element or bogeyman kind of element to it. That's what it is. And gradually you see that it's becoming a development on the vigilante, and the concept of the vigilante in Gotham. And then within the serialized elements, again, it's great to see Montoya and Allen back on the screen. I have to say, I thought Barbara Keane and Montoya's scene on the steps of the GCPD was really good. Again, I just thought it showed two strong women, powerful women, in their own rights, trying to protect people that they care about.
Yeah.
For Barbara, Jim, and for Renee Montoya, her old lover and ex, which is Barbara Keane.
Yeah.
And then it's seeing Oswald and Gertrude, mother and son, reunite. And I have to say, on the performance, again, small amount of screen time, I really want to see Carol Kane more as Oswald's mum. I think she is superb. This Faded Glory doesn't kind of sum it all up. It's Faded Glory with that sense of senility coming into it, with the love of a mother for her son, and just that willingness to defend her son no matter what. So for me, a really good episode. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, no, I think I'm on the same page as you. I did enjoy the episode, definitely. I'd like to think, maybe in 6 months' time, when they have more episodes under the belt, that something like this, where there's a supernatural element that eventually plays out to have something less supernatural behind it, might play out over a couple of episodes. We might get to see, there's a murder that they're investigating in this episode, and there's other stuff playing out around it, and then the next episode there's another murder connected to the last one. Perhaps that's a way you can stretch a story like this out well over the course of it. It felt like there's a lot of ideas shoved into this episode. In a good way, I did enjoy it, and like yourself, I wanted to have the answer to the question that was posed: who is the spirit of the ghost at the beginning of the episode? It's nice to have that answer, but sometimes I feel it's an idea that may be a little bit wasted by using it in one episode. You could have stretched it out and had a 3-parter or a 5-parter that delved into the investigation occasionally. That might be nice to see soon. Have something serialized within the investigations lasting longer than one episode. That might be
absolutely.
Nice
and I think that's something that we've kind of mentioned for other reasons as well. This idea of a few of these themes or story arcs, whether it's the serialized element or now, as you say, with regards to the actual investigations, and just
like, for example,
being given a bit of time to breathe, definitely.
Yeah. Like, for example, I'd love to see them bring in the Long Halloween storyline, which is a year-long storyline. It's when Batman really struck a chord in the 80s as a comic book, was when they started to bring in a storyline that wasn't a single-issue story, that was something that lasted for 12 issues. And if there's one thing you can learn from that as a TV show, it's the people will stay on board with your show if you give them something to come back for every week. We've got the characters right now; they've been set up now. We're 6 episodes in. I think most people understand who the characters are going to be. We've now got our first real setup episode for Enigma, the only real lacking character so far, and we have our setup episode for the past of Harvey Bullock, who he was. We know who he is now, but we know who he was after this episode, which I think is really helpful. So now I think it's time to start moving off and jumping into a bit more of a longer term story arc for all of the characters.
I think that's a really great idea. If you think that Gotham started in early autumn, you have this idea of harvest festivals, you have the idea of Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, April Fools, which are all in and connected to the Long Halloween or Dark Victory, which is the follow-up to the Long Halloween.
Yeah.
That you could get a lot of those actual dates into a season. Certainly if it gets renewed for season 2 or another season, for a 22-23 episode run. Yeah. That covers an awful lot of creepy holidays that could utilize that rogues gallery or different spins on that rogues gallery, which could be an interesting concept.
Yeah, I think even just, as I say, the simple concept of some overarching threat for the course of the season. The big bad right now is the mob, but they seem like they've been the big bad for the last 10 years of Gotham. It doesn't seem like they're a brand new threat that are coming in at this time when Jim Gordon has arrived. So I'm wondering if you could just stretch out some of these threats that they're starting with, which they're catching every episode or killing every episode or potentially are running away after being filled full of Viper, like they did last episode.
But what about Oswald? Is he not the big impending threat, or do we feel that we're still...
For me, I feel
he's still yet to play his card?
Yeah, for me, I feel Oswald is still too young. I think there's a very good possibility that Oswald might be put into prison. He might be captured and put into prison, potentially after this episode. It's very likely he's just walked into a room of Gotham City Police Department. He's walked in there and said, "I'm Oswald Cobblepot," looking very happy with himself. It's quite possible that next episode he's going to be arrested, put into prison for the crimes that he has been involved in. It's very, very possible that Maroni will get taken out and put into prison, or Falcone. So once those older characters are taken out, does that allow Oswald to rise up very quickly? He still seems very young. So if he's put in prison for the next 2 seasons of the show, potentially, you know,
Yeah.
it would be very doubtful given the fan base that's out there for him. But
whoa.
but he could be running things from inside the prison. You know, that's
well, that is true.
That could be the next learning layer.
Leaky walls of Arkham are sure to allow
or Blackgate Prison, which is
or Blackgate Prison,
which is another one. Yeah,
are sure to allow the mob or the likes of Oswald Cobblepot to carry on with his crimes and influence beyond the walls of the prison or the asylum.
Absolutely. Maybe it'll just set up some more contacts for him.
Yeah. Well, I think on that then, that's the end of our review.
Yep. On to the feedback.
Fascinating.
Okay, there's some feedback from Twitter. And so Lady J, who did the great Keytoya playlist that we mentioned in last week's episode, or
a couple of weeks ago,
that we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, was talking about, you know, what should fans of Victoria Cartagena and Renee Montoya in Gotham, what should they be called? The Questioners, the Questions, or the Objectivists.
Yeah.
Maybe we could also say Monty's gang after this episode, and Crispus Allen's sort of nice little sort of pet name for Montoya as Monty. So that was a nice little play there.
Absolutely, and I saw Gotham on 5 or Channel 5. It went back to asking Crispus Allen or asking Andrew Stewart Jones, is his nickname Crispy? It's an extra crispy, which I like.
Monty and Crispy.
But yeah, so I went back on this one and just went with the questionnaires. What do you think, John? What's your
I think I would go for the Questioners.
I think that's really good. Let us know what you think. Send in your feedback to us and let us know what you think the fans of Renee Montoya should be called.
Yeah, so, and then on Twitter, Trisha Walter and Julia Morgan having a discussion there with ourselves about can't wait to see Oswald don the hat and monocle. And I think we're in perfect agreement. We can't wait to see how Oswald transforms into a beautiful penguin with his plumage and that being kept in tip-top order, which I think, again, we saw this episode where his mom is like pressing his suit and making sure that it's all looking ironed, it's clean, so that her son just looks the business for his evil machinations.
Yeah, no, he's a penguin, not a peacock. So remember that. So very
Oh,
different.
I know that. Well, they still have plumage, don't
I
they?
know, yeah.
Although it might be oily.
Might be a bit oily.
To protect it.
No,
from
that's
the
his
salt
hair,
water.
definitely.
Well, yeah.
But
and Julia saying, you know, that Robin will carry it off perfectly.
yeah,
So, and we're in complete agreement that, you know, Robin Lord Taylor is doing a absolutely amazing job of portraying Oswald Cobblepot and this genesis that is the Penguin, and we can't wait to see that full transformation into the Penguin moniker, like everyone else, I would think.
yeah, definitely. I think one of the pieces he did talk about before was that he wants to bring a little bit of the fun side of some of the earlier people who've played this part, you know, in the past, and I think he's really doing that. I think Robin Lord Taylor's taking, you know, he's bringing in some of the humor that has been sorely lacking in some of the previous incarnations of Gotham and of the Batman character. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see what he does. I'm really loving it so far. So the piece of feedback that we got this week was from Daniel Butcher, who was talking about our episode Viper. He saw the episode and says thanks to us for being right in the middle of 2 rounds of snow shoveling. He's in a very cold place, obviously. He said our episode made him wish he could stay in the cold a bit longer to finish it off, which is a really nice compliment. Thanks, Daniel. And Daniel goes on to say, I love that this episode, I hope, shows the beginning of the longest partnership in Batman's career. Robins come and go, but Alfred has always been there. Well, except in the early comics, so I guess Grayson was first. Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, definitely that last episode, Viper, the interaction between Bruce and Alfred was great, and it was really good to see them starting to develop this partnership together, start to develop that relationship that's going to last for the rest of Bruce's life, really.
Definitely. I think it was really good, and I think we made the point at the time that, is this Alfred maybe just placating the young Bruce Wayne in this particular thing, or is this the start where he will help Bruce Wayne because he understands that Gotham is corrupt, can be dangerous, needs hope, and so is willing to work with the young Bruce Wayne in these investigations that he's doing. Yeah. And I think that's a really important partnership, and it's a real good sort of starting block for that. And I think, again, in today's episode, we see the hurt on his face when Bruce kind of, possibly without realizing, kind of makes the assumption that, well, there's no one here that will miss me. I have no one to who will miss me, and I have no one to miss, kind of thing. And you see the hurt on Alfred's face. And I think this is all starting to build into that great long-standing relationship and partnership. So, yeah, I'm totally with you there, Daniel. Or should we call you Detective Butcher?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, thank you very much for the feedback, Daniel. Just a little bit of speculation for you as well. There's rumours that the Flying Graysons will appear in season 1 of Gotham, so that Dick Grayson's parents might actually appear before Dick's born. They may appear as the Flying Graysons, which I think is quite cool.
Yeah, no, that would be very cool.
Start off the references to the partnership a bit early. Yeah, thanks very much for your feedback. It's good to hear from you guys. To Lady J and Trisha Walter and Julia Morgan on Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter at Gotham TV Podcast. If you want to send in your feedback by email, like Daniel did, you can email us at feedback@gothamtvpodcast.com, or you can email us, either of us separately, at Derek@gothamtvpodcast.com or John at gothamtvpodcast.com.
Yeah, you can also follow us on any of our social media handles, Google+, Facebook, Tumblr. Just search for Gotham TV Podcast, and of course on Twitter as well, Gotham TV Podcast. Just enter that in and search for us, and we're hopefully sure to pop up on your screens and with a big smiley face. And so we really want to thank you for all the feedback, interactions, discussions that we get from it. It's great to have that. It's great to put it on air for you. Thank you from me for listening. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. And if you want to leave us a review on iTunes, we have all of our podcasts are up there. Just have a look on iTunes. You'll find us there under Gotham TV Podcast. Leave us a review. If you can leave us a good one, particularly is always appreciated. It'll help other people find our podcast. Thanks very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Gotham TV Podcast. Do not cross Allen and Montoya.
Saw him, I think, on film, and I really enjoyed that film.
Yeah, and he's being rumored to play Deadshot in the Suicide Squad film. In the Suicide Squad film. Maybe will Tom Hardy actually reprise that role for another film?
He might reprise that role. I don't know about reprise.
Will Tom Hardy actually reprise the role for? Will Tom Hardy reprise the role for this film? Do you think?
Probably not, because he got...
The series keeps running, so go check it out.
And if you saw that Dr. Fate helmet, I don't know, like me, I wept. I was so happy. But anyway, enough about Dr. Fate and Doctor Strange as well.
Yeah, and of course...
I do have to say, my notes does say Bullock gets porn mags for...
You don't have to say that. If you get on his right side, he's obviously good to you.
He'll buy you porn mags. Hooray.
Alright.